December 8th, 1980, 40 years ago. Could we have possibly imagined what we'd be living through today? Probably not, because 40 years ago we were consumed with living through the death of John Lennon. Now, I know all of you listening out there weren't around 40 years ago, so let me remind you that this was an all-consuming experience. For days, for weeks. That was our pandemic. The death of just one man. One man whose death affected hundreds of millions of people around the world, whose unimaginable, unthinkable death affected hundreds of millions of people. The year 1980 was met with great enthusiasm and expectations because of the new decade feature brought along with it. Hey, the 80s are here. But in truth, 1980 was filled with fraud, beginning with a recession and a 6.3% unemployment rate, peaking at 7.8% mid-year. And surrounding all of that were economic hardships, earthquakes, tornadoes, volcanic eruptions, remember Mount St. Helens? A major Florida suspension bridge knocked over by a Liberian tanker, scores killed, fires, Unabombers, lottery scandals, bankruptcies, the awful Sox, the worst Cubs, and all tragically capped off by the murder of John Lennon on December 8, 1980, a man whose music and lyrics undeniably made all of us culturally richer. So everyone who lived through this time has a story. Here's mine. Thanks for listening. The day started for me like most Mondays, up and out the door and onto Lakeshore Drive, heading for 444 North Michigan Avenue, where the studios of 95.5 WMET were located on the third floor. That morning, I remember hearing in the car on my way to work, Just Like Starting Over, and thinking how great it was that John Lennon was back on the radio with new music. How great it sounded. His latest album, Double Fantasy, was 3 weeks old at this point in time. MET back then did Monday night football parties with old-style beer at bars throughout Chicagoland. And that night, the party was in the city at a bar on North Clark. Along with my good friend, WMET music director Dave Benson, we headed up to the bar on Clark to make sure everything was good with the promotion that night. The bar was packed with Monday night football fans, watching a close one between the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. It was a festive atmosphere. Christmas was in the air. But Benson and I weren't much into the game because we were hungry, and we'd made plans to meet a couple of sales guy friends of ours from the station up at our favorite Mexican hang, El Jardín, further north on Clark Street up in Wrigleyville. So we left the bar, we got in Benson's car, and headed north. We missed Howard Cosell's announcement by minutes, because when we turned the car radio on, there was MET evening jock Mike Bechtel making the announcement. I don't know the words to use to describe my feelings. I don't know how we made it north to El Jardín. It was like a dream. It was like sleepwalking. We found our friends at El Jardín and sat down at a large round table. Nothing seemed right, especially being there. Within 10 minutes, Benson and I looked at each other and knew what we had to do. We excused ourselves. We climbed back into his car and headed south to the station. We were there all night till the very early hours of the morning. Chuck Gowdy stopped by and did a piece for ABC 7 Eyewitness News. I was producing Lennon vignettes all night long in between crying jags. The last time I'd cried this hard and this long was when my mother died in 1968. This was only Monday. This funereal atmosphere lasted at least the entire week. So much crying from everyone, everywhere. So much reminiscing about one's teen years when John Lennon played a role that few could touch. I remember calling my dad one night right after the murder and sobbing on the phone. I was 29, and I asked him if he understood how I was feeling. For some reason, it was very important for me to know that he understood all those feelings I had about the Beatles when I was a kid, and that they were real and that they never left. Years later, I read a book about baby boomers written by a radio consultant by the name of John Lennon. A fact from the book that stuck with me was a study pertaining to the 3 most emotional days in the life of the average 40-year-old baby boomer. And they are the death of a parent, the death of JFK, and the death of John Lennon. I guess I'm a pretty average baby boomer. It figures 2020 would be the year that marks the 40th anniversary of John Lennon's death. I mean, we've had everything lobbed at us this year. Everything but the kitchen sink, and I'm pretty sure I dodged that just a couple of weeks ago. It's all a part of this very strange script we're living through. Maybe it was the excruciatingly heavy lift some of us went through 40 years ago that prepared us for what was ever down the road, although not much could have prepared us for what we've lived through these past 10 months. I just remember the way we made it through 40 years ago, and that was together. And I hope together is the way we can make it through the rest of 2020 and into a healthier future for all of us.